I believe a lot of lads, when they start off in their lifting journey, they spend far too much time focusing on irrelevant details that may or may not matter. And it's only after a couple of years of trial and error do they really see the value in some of the most basic parts of the process. And in today's video and across the next number of videos, I'm going to share with you just that. Some of the most underrated tasks, practices or habits that you could be doing that could get you as jacked as you want to be. If you're new to the channel, my name is Shane Story. I'm an online strength and physique coach, and I work with guys who are fed up of chopping and changing the program every time they read a new study or see a new Instagram post and need some consistent direction towards their training to get them towards their best physique. I compete myself in natural bodybuilding alongside drug tested powerlifting, and I've been training for the last 15 years. So what I'm going to share with you today and across the next number of videos is not just based on theory. It's based off real world application. Things that have helped me level up my results as well as help bring better results to the table for all of my clients. Before we get into the topic of today's video, if you'd like to learn from a coach who has skin in the game, click subscribe. And if you have any comments along the way or any topic suggestions, do drop them in the comments. Okay, let's get into it. So the first topic we're going to discuss in this underrated series is going to be exercise execution and ensuring that you are either learning how to review the training videos, and you're taking them in the first place, of course, or you're having a coach review them for you. A lot of the online discourse when it comes to building muscle is centered around how many sets should I do? What exercises are the best? Should I be doing high volume, low volume, high rep, low rep? And while these are important, it doesn't really matter all that much if how you are actually implementing those training variables, i.e. how you're actually training within the gym and executing those sets or those reps. It doesn't really matter what they look like on paper. Whether you do high volume or low volume, high rep or low rep, it doesn't really matter what type of approach you're taking if all of your sets look like garbage and your technique breaks down every single time you get towards the point of intensity and having a high level of effort. Good exercise execution is the foundation at which every single training program has to be built from. And this is why two people could be following the exact same training program on paper but get completely different results. So that will lead you to the question of what is good exercise execution. And exercise execution is clearly going to change depending on the exercise. But there are a couple of foundational principles that we want to think about. In my opinion, a well executed set is one where you're starting to load the target muscle group at the very first point of the set and the very first rep. And by the time you get towards the point of failure, it is that target muscle group that is failing first. A very good example here is if you are trying to train your lats and you are loading your lats at the very start of that pull down, but you fail at your biceps before you fail at your lats. That to me would indicate there is an issue here with exercise selection, which could be fixed. Another example could be if you are performing the likes of an RDL, and in the RDL you find that you are failing at your lower back before you're failing at the likes of your glutes. That could also be a limitation within your exercise execution that could potentially be ironed out. Another element of exercise execution that should not be overlooked is controlling the change of direction between eccentric to concentric, lowering to lifting phase. And one of the reasons for this is as we go through a lengthening cycle, we are going to have not only the muscle stretch, but we're also going to have the tendon within the joint start to stretch too. As this stretches, it's going to increase storing elastic energy, and that wants to just snap the joint back into its starting position. Now, this helps us to increase force within those stretch positions, which is why at the bottom of a bench press or out the bottom of a squat, you feel so much stronger there. But when you pause, you don't necessarily seem to get the same level of effect because the stretch reflex starts to die down. Now, I'm not saying that when you're going through your exercises to build muscle, you need to pause for 3 to 4 seconds when you're getting towards the bottom of the stretch phase. But I do think if you have a slight slowdown as you come to the end of the eccentric range of motion, just before you get to the end range of the joint, and have a little bit of a brief pause, it just allows you to start the concentric or lifting phase by ensuring you're keeping on the target muscle group and having all your reps look repeatable. Versus when people are doing their lifting a little bit less controlled and they're just using a lot more stretch reflex, they have a lot more variance between repetitions. And this is important in something like a multi-joint exercise where you have the opportunity to load many different muscle groups. And there can also be benefits with this particular type of technique if you are somebody who struggles to feel certain muscle groups, because it gives you an opportunity now to slow down and cue those muscle groups into effect. So a very good example here would be on like a chest press or on a bench press. We know that using lateral forces, i.e. either sliding your hands inwards or outwards, can have differential effects on different areas that could be targeted. By sliding your hand in, you might get a little bit more pec activation. By sliding your hands outwards, you might get a little bit more tricep activation. By just pressing straight up, you might just get equal distribution of forces. Even when we look at the likes of a leg press, if you think about keeping mostly whole foot pressure, you might get a little bit more even distribution in regards to forces. If you keep more forward foot pressure, you might get a little bit more activation through the likes of your quads. So this is where actually having that little bit of a brief moment of change the direction of the bottom can pay dividends in your training over long term. Not only that, there could be some benefits from an orthopedic perspective. I'm 30, have been doing powerlifting for a number of years before I started to focus more on bodybuilding. I've come into bodybuilding, unfortunately, with some achy joints. And a lot of that is from lifting a lot more explosively and lifting recklessly and lifting very heavy. Whereas now, when I'm training the likes of my leg press, I need to be a lot more controlled so that my knees don't feel like they're about to explode. I need to be more controlled when I'm doing a lot of tricep work so I feel like my elbows are not about to turn into dust. Now, while these two aspects of exercise execution are important, there are other more obvious ones that you could potentially think about right now. And number one is going to be range of motion. Now, range of motion is going to be very individual. It's going to be depending on your own mobility and where you can actively control those through. It's also going to be dependent on what type of exercise you're doing. If you're doing a multi-joint movement, you're going to have to think about, for squat, for example, the position of your torso and your rib cage and your pelvis. You're gonna have to think about the mobility of your ankle, your hip, and your knee. You're gonna have to think about stance width and a lot of other variables in between. And this is why actually working with a coach can actually just help you learn how to squat better, do a leg press better. We want to ideally ensure that we're training to the full range of motion that we do have available at any given joint for a particular muscle group that we're trying to train. Because this is gonna allow us to get the most amount of length into a particular muscle group, and therefore we're gonna be getting a full lengthening and a full shortening of a muscle group through different exercises. Now, I have a really good example here of how I used to perform a leg press. So you could see I have a lot of plates on the sled. I look like I am working hard, and I think I'm working hard. Now, you will see that I'm getting very little range of motion. I'm barely getting 90 degrees in knee flexion. Now, at the time, I did think that this was just me working as hard as I could, and I thought that was all the range of motion I had. Whereas here's a video of me now lifting on the same leg press with the same mental load, give or take, and you can see you'll get a lot more range of motion. Now, a couple of things that I have done differently here. I am wearing squat shoes. So the squat shoes actually give me a little more plantar flexion, so foot pointing down, and that essentially allows me to go through more dorsiflexion as the sled comes towards me. So it's essentially helping me to increase my ankle mobility. The second thing I'm doing is I'm allowing my heels to actually come off the pad. Now, I'm allowing my heels to come off the sled because I feel in control of the sled. I feel confident with that load, and I'm able to keep control, not just letting the sled come down crashing on me and have no control through my feet. I'm very much in control of that at all times. Now, for some people, if they don't gradually build themselves up to this position where you're lifting the heel off, they can get some knee pain. So you do need to watch out for this. The other thing that's helping me to get a lot deeper is I am also thinking about my rib cage position. So in the first video, I'm keeping my ribs up a lot more, and that is actually kind of creating some anterior pelvic tilt in towards my hips. When your hips are essentially kind of tilted forward, that can actually reduce some of your femur or upper thigh bone's ability to actually rotate and get space in the hip capsule to actually allow the hip to flex properly. So in the second example, I'm actually keeping my ribs down a lot more. That's keeping my hips in a more neutral position, and that essentially just creates more space for my legs to move in my hip. And all these things together are now allowing me to get more range of motion at the knee, and that's allowing me to build my quads better. The other thing that you could potentially see for this video is training intensity. And training intensity is a really important thing to be looking at when it does come to reviewing training videos. We want to ideally see that those final few reps, as you get closer to failure, are starting to slow down. They're not slowing down because you want them to. They're slowing down because you simply can't overcome the weight any faster. This is what true failure looks like. You're starting to have your type 2 muscle fibers experience a high level of fatigue, and as this type of fatigue increases, it's going to have to recruit the bigger motor units, bigger muscle fibers, and essentially when it does come to producing high levels of force actually move at very, very slow speeds. So that's what it will look like. When we're producing the most amount of force, we're going to move the weight the slowest. And that's why a 1 rep max attempt looks really slow. So by reviewing your training videos, you're able to actually see when somebody's getting closer to failure, because their last few reps should look like they're starting to grind and grind and grind all the way till they come to a complete stop. This is going to be completely different in beginners though, or somebody who's new to an exercise. Somebody who's completely new to exercise and is in that beginner stage, they will likely just go from doing fine to just fading out of nowhere. Whereas somebody who's more trained, they're going to have a more efficient neuromuscular system, and they're going to be able to get closer and closer to failure just rep by rep by rep. So this is one thing that you should be reviewing your training videos for, because if you have a muscle group that's not growing, I can bet you're probably not doing enough range of motion, or you're maybe not doing enough intensity, maybe not doing both, or you could have some of the other artifacts which I discussed, maybe not having that target muscle being the thing that's fading at the end of the set, or it could also be the fact that maybe you're just having different muscles being loaded by not controlling the change of direction. So the best way, hands down, to assess these aspects of exercise execution is going to be record your sets. I have a tripod which I bring to the gym every day with me, and I record my sets on my phone. Now, I record my hardest sets, my heaviest sets, and I do this for a couple of reasons. My hardest sets and my heaviest sets are going to be areas where my form is more likely to break down. They're the areas where I'm more likely to drop some range of motion in lieu of getting more load in the bar, so it keeps me a lot more honest in that regard. It's also the areas where I might end up sandbagging the set if I feel like I'm a little bit afraid and being a bit of a pussy. And then by both recording a set, it keeps me accountable, but it gives me a way for me to actually assess my exercise execution and if there's any improvements that I need to make. And then I provide that service for my clients. I can see how they are getting on when performing specific exercises, and I can give them pointers as to how they can either improve their range of motion, intensity, or execution in general. But you may not necessarily have a coach or be in a position to get one. And what I recommend you do is look at how some of the best bodybuilders in the world train. I'd more so lean towards a lot of natural bodybuilders, because natural bodybuilders typically have to find a way to optimize all their training variables and all their aspects of training, especially their training technique. So following somebody like AJ Morris, Dirk Emmerich, Alberto Nunez, these guys are absolute wizards at lifting and being masters of movement. And if you were to just look at how these guys train and compare your lifts to how they lift, you'll quickly be able to see where you potentially need to improve. If I'm being honest, this is probably the most important topic that I'm going to cover in this series, because it can make such a big difference to your physique. And I always get these comments from clients as well when they tell me, wow, that exercise feels completely different to what it felt like last week, and it pays off over time within their physique. And this is something I see every single day when I go to the gym. I see guys training hard, being consistent, but training to subpar levels of exercise execution. And from my perspective, I used to actually lift a lot heavier than I do now, and I wasn't as big. And it's because I've been reviewing my training footage and getting oversight on it that I've actually been seeing that I've actually been able to grow with lighter weight when I perform exercises as they are intended. We've all seen the guy in the gym swinging the 20, 25 dumbbells around, but he has 10-inch arms. Don't let that be you, because when it comes to building muscle, it doesn't really matter how many plates you have on the leg press there. It doesn't matter how big the dumbbells are that you're pressing. If you cannot control and own that dumbbell, that leg press lead, you can't bring the muscles that you want through full range of motion. You can't push them to a sufficient level of intensity, and you progress that over time. And this is where focusing more on exercise execution will actually allow you to get more from each kilo that you lift at the gym. For each rep that you do, it will be far more stimulating. Now, because exercise execution is so abstract and so exercise dependent, I want to give you something back. If you want to get a free form review, I have dropped in a form into the description, and you can fill that out and send in 1 to 3 videos of exercises that you want reviewed. Make sure to pick muscle groups that you're maybe struggling to build, and pick your main exercises that you're using to build that muscle group. I'll send you over a video review going through the main points that I think you could improve upon, whether that is going to be range of motion, intensity, control, change direction, or some other individual aspect of your technique that you could really master. So if you want that, just go into the description below and I'll get back to you at a later date. But that's it for this video. If you did enjoy it, make sure to leave a comment. If you have any questions, like the video, subscribe if you have not already. And of course, if you want to just get some oversight in your training as a whole, and you want to reach out for coaching and join my team of guys who are making some phenomenal gains, you can also just click one of the links in the bio, which will bring you directly to my WhatsApp. That's it. Talk soon.